I'm going to make the straps with the same dark purple. Now there's a fold up here, but this entire length is 22 inches, and that is more than enough to make handles from. I'll just cut a strip, and then I will cut it at where the fold is, and then I'll have two. I'm going to cut them 5 inches wide, just for stability, and I will show you how I do that. I've got my iron hot. First of all, iron each strip in half lengthwise. Like so. You just need to have a mark for that. Probably dry iron would be better. Take it off steam. Fluff. Just go down carefully. Sometimes it's hard to see the edge when you have dark fabric. Do the best you can. Give yourself a line down the middle. Do that to each one. Now, let's open it up. Come on. There we go. So now there's a line down the middle. And I'm going to do mine with a turn in about 1/4 of an inch on both sides, like that. And then I'll show you what I do next. I took a strip of scrap batting. Now, the distance between the fold there, for that bended over part, and the middle is 2 inches. So I cut my chunk of batting off at 1 7/8, just so it's not too bulky, and I'm laying it in here in like this side of the channel, just before the fold, because you don't want it right up in the fold, then it's harder to fold, and just before the middle. So it's about a little bit either way of the middle and a little bit either way of this fold. Then you can fold this up easy enough to meet the edges, and there's not loads of bulk. And then all I have to do is sew together down this side, and I will also sew down this side. And I'll just trim off the batting as I go. Okay, have 2 straps. So they'll go on the bag about like so. And that's a perfectly good enough carry handle for me. I don't mind that. If you want to make your straps longer to go over your shoulder, by all means do so. You'll probably have to piece your strips together to make it long enough, like for doing binding. And don't worry too much about the batting. Once you lay it in the channel, it will just kind of stick to the fabric anyway, and you can just sew it on. So you can put like a piece of binding and then another piece of binding. You don't have to worry about sticking that together. Just lay it in there and sew it up. I'm going to start sewing the bag parts together. And then before I completely sew it all together, I will attach the straps. But first things first. You probably could put the straps on now. It wouldn't really matter either way. They just kind of flap. It's entirely up to you. You want to do your straps first, by all means, go ahead. So I'm making sure that my opening of my pockets is at the top. And we go right sides together. And this pocket opening is at the top. So we put them together. And we sew them like so. I'm going to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance and go down one side, across the bottom, back up the other side. Make sure when you start sewing, do a bunch of back stitches, holds it better, and when you get back around the other end, do the same, back and forth. Now, I want my bag to have a flat bottom, so you have to box the corners, and this is how. Take your bag, you got to go down to the bottom to your corner, and you put it flat so that the corner is up. So you got your seam sitting upwards like this, okay? And what you have to do, I'll turn it around so hopefully you can see this. It's really hard on dark fabric, unfortunately, but you'll kind of get the idea. Okay, so you have your seam here. You go right down to the point. And what you want to have is this seam on top going this way, and the one on the bottom going the other way, which I have. See, that one goes that way. Sorry, I'm not on the camera. That way, that way, that way, that way. And you got to line them up. So I kind of just like Point my fingers down and wiggle it into position. And you can sort of feel when they've met up because it goes flat. And make sure you have a little bit all the way along, like not just the edge, like go in a little bit and make sure it's all flat and met up. There's no bumps, you can sort of tell where you are. That feels relatively good to me. We'll just scooch it a little bit this way. There, that feels better. Okay, now make it flat, like put it on your mat, like flat, like that, okay? Let me just check and make sure I'm in frame, because I'm always guessing here. Okay, there we go. Then back up a little bit. Okay. So we have a point and we have this flat. This seam here and that seam there are meeting up reasonably well. And then, of course, it moves when I put it down. It's always something. Come on. Try to get it as close as you possibly can, because otherwise you will have a kind of a weird boxy end. Sometimes what I'll do, too, just to make sure, is grab a pin, shove it through the seam on the top and see where I'm at. Yeah, not bad, actually. I'll move it this way a bit. That feels a bit better. There. Okay, that's better. Snugged up. Okay, put it down flat. Now, I need my little small ruler and my white chalk pen, which has vanished. Oh, no, there it is. Okay. And whichever measurement you go up this way, it will be doubled going this way. So if I take my ruler, just a minute here, and put it here, I hope you guys can see this. The diagonal line on the ruler goes this way, okay, lining up on the side. And I scoot it down until the corner where it says 2 inches is kind of on the corner there, and I'm kind of lining 2 up along the seam line that's going this way. So that way you have a 90-degree angle. Does that make sense? I hope you guys can all see that. Let me just double check in the back of the camera. Yeah, that looks better, okay? So then what you do is hold it steady and just draw a line. I'm using white just because this is dark. You could use a light pencil. It doesn't really matter because this is the inside of the bag and you won't be able to see it. But just like don't use like black Sharpie or something. There. Okay, there's my sew line. Stick a couple pins in it so it doesn't wheel around. Like that, and then you do exactly the same thing on the other corner on the opposite side. There we go. Both corners done. Now you can just leave them like this and sort of tuck them underneath, and when the bag is sewn together, they will squish down and nobody will notice it's even there. I prefer to not have bulkiness because I'm just like that. So I take my scissors and I go from my stitched edge toward the point and just cut off the extra. I'm slightly more than 1/4 inch, so it's a fairly generous seam allowance. You don't want it coming apart. Then you don't have too much bulk, just about like so. So my sew line is there, and I'm about, it's not quite 3/8, but it's a bit more than 1/4 inch. Just to make sure. Look, so I turned the bag out the right way, and now you can see that the bottom is a rectangle, and it will stand up somewhat. Alright, I'm going to figure out my strap placement. So, I think, okay, there's the middle. I folded it again, but there's the middle. Now, if I go, let's say 4 inches, that will put a strap there. And 4 inches that way, we'll put a strap there. And I think that's good enough. So we'll line that up on 4 there. And I'll just make another line with the pencil. And then I'll go over to 8 and I'll make a line there, and I'll just bring it down, and that's 4. And we'll get the straps and get them pinned on. Okay, so your straps go down like this. before you sew the bag together. Now make sure you're not all twisty, okay? Have it flat, and then turn one side and turn one side. Then you won't have anything weird going on. So I'm going to line my strap up on the outside of that white line, and I'm going to stick a pin in there to hold it straight and in place, because you don't want it all crooked. Put a pin in there like that. And this one, same thing, line it up properly, just outside that white line. Make sure the edge is straight. Pin it in place. Okay, there we go. Whoops, not pinned all the way, so your bag is closed though. There we go. Yep, too far. That's better. Okay, now I'm going to take it to the sewing machine, and all I'm going to do is go back and forth along the edge a few times. That's it, because it will get sewn down more when I sew the bag together. To gauge the spot for the strap on the other side, just line it up. Keep your bag flat and line it up so that it matches that one. Oops, I went over a little bit actually. Let's fix that. Just there. Hold it and pin it down. And then make sure that you're still staying flat and it's not all twisted around. And then line this one up all straight over onto this one, like so. If you're off a tiny bit, it doesn't matter a ton, but try to get it as accurate as you possibly can. There, a couple pins so it doesn't move around, and now I'll go sew that one. Just only go right there, back and forth, like I go in, back tack, go a bit more, back tack, go a bit more, back tack, that kind of thing. Almost. I sewed the lining the same way as I sewed the outside of the bag, leaving the side to turn through, and I boxed the corners the same way. Now I have to sew it together. So the correct sides, the right sides of each part have to face each other. So this is the wrong side of the lining, because there's the seam. And you can see in there, this is the wrong side of the outside. So when they're touching, the right side will be touching this way and the right side will be touching that way. And I'm going to go around the edge and do a slightly more than a 1/4 inch seam. And as I go around, it will go over my straps one more time. They're right about here, and I pinned them down to the front just so they wouldn't go blah, blah, and flap all around. So that's the next task, is to sew it together. The sewing table I'm using has an insert, but because I have to sew around the bag, I'm going to take this part out just so I can get the bag in better. I'll kind of show you. Hopefully you can see this. Get the bag over here. Then I can kind of put it, like the bottom part goes underneath my machine down here, like this part, sort of. Just tuck it in there. I'll have to be careful with the clips, obviously. And then I can sew my seam around like that. After you have your inner and your outer sewn together, trim off the thread, then you go and find the hole that you left in the lining, which is right here, and you pull the whole works through. Careful to pin, because I put those on for the strap, so just watch when you're grabbing it, and just kind of jiggle it out carefully. You get the idea. Once you got it turned through, looks kind of crazy, go back to the slit you had in the lining, and if you just kind of put your index finger in each side and put your thumb and your middle finger like this on each side like that, and just sort of give it a little tug, it will kind of fold down. So give it a slight tug and then just line it up, and then I'm going to take it over and press it so that it's flat, and I'm just going to run that through my machine and sew it down. Once you have the hole in the lining sewn up, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bump that. It gets a bit tricky, but you basically have to gather the lining up and shove it down inside the bag. So, kind of like that. Get it down there. Give it a good shake around. Put your hands down in it and just sort of push down so that your boxed corners of your lining go into your boxed corners of your bag. Once you start putting stuff in it, they'll kind of match up anyway. The only thing left to do is a top stitch around here. Oops, sorry, there we go. So I'm kind of rolling it with my fingers and making sure that the inner liner and the outer bag line up. You want it even. And I'll kind of just run around with that with my fingers, and I'll probably press it just to make sure. But you can just kind of run your fingers along it and get it sort of how you want it, and then press it. And then I'm just going to go around with a 1/8 inch top stitch. I'm probably going to use the purple thread, because it doesn't really matter if it shows up on the inside a little bit right there, and it'll look just fine on the outside. I'll show you that when I'm all done. There we go. Top stitched all around. You can see the purple on the light color, but not on the outside. Doesn't really matter. I'll back out and show you the whole thing. Alrighty, bag is done. Good sturdy straps. Pocket on this side. Outside part. Same on the other side, a little wider. Pink pocket on the inside. Done. See, and it folds up. Whoops, I gotta push this out. Yeah, sometimes the boxes don't stay properly, but you gotta put things in it and it'll be fine. So, fold it up, pack, roll it up, pack, easy. Thanks for watching.